Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on search engine optimization. My name is Doug Pye. I'm from the Phillips Group based in Brisbane, and I'm your host for today's webinar, and I'm delighted to have so many of you with us here today. In a moment, I'll hand you over to Jake Falconer, who is an expert in search engine optimization and today's presenter. At the end of the webinar, I will hold a questions and answer session with Jake, and we look forward to receiving your questions. This webinar is part of a series being provided by the Department of Tourism, Major Events, Small Business and the Commonwealth Games. We hope that you find it informative and useful to your business. Jake, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar all about search engine optimization. Let's quickly look at the agenda for today's webinar. We'll be kicking off with an introduction and orientation, which will run for approximately the first 5 minutes. After that, we will run into the key workbook points, which will obviously formulate the bulk of today's webinar. And as Doug mentioned, following that, we'll have some time to field your questions. So the remainder of the webinar will be spent on that. Just quickly looking at the control panel of GoToWebinar, for any of you who would like to offer a question, just use the questions box, which you can see pictured on screen now. We'll be taking questions throughout the webinar, and these will be collated and fielded towards the end. It's important to note that anyone who's using an iPad or any sort of tablet, unfortunately, you won't be able to use that question facility, as GoToWebinar doesn't currently support tablets. For those of you who like to tweet, feel free to use Twitter at any stage throughout this webinar. The hashtag that you should be using is QLDBIZ. And now a quick introduction about myself. My name is Jake Falconer. I'm an online marketing consultant working with the Phillips Group. My corporate and search marketing experience is quite varied. I've worked in a lot of corporate environments, including Virgin Australia, Ray White Real Estate, that lovely energy drink called Red Bull, and of course Nike, as well as a wide range of other corporate environments. My specific search marketing experience relates to industries such as the building and property development sectors, home renovation and services, fashion and fashion labels, and also a variety of other online retailers. So without further ado, let's jump into the topic at hand, which is search engine optimization. Search engine optimization is often referred to also as SEO, is about the process of improving the visibility of a website or web page. When we're talking about the visibility here, of course we're talking about the search engines such as Google, Yahoo, Bing, and the others that exist. And we are referring to the natural, also known as the organic or unpaid or algorithmic results. So I guess in layman's terms, what we are talking about is getting your website to appear at the top of those natural search results rankings. It's important when anyone's taking out or starting off with a new website build that they consider SEO at the initial stages. That's not to say that anyone who doesn't already have an existing website has missed out on the opportunity, but yes, for optimal SEO implementation, ideally it started from day dot. You'll notice at the bottom of the screen there is a progress indicator that I'll be using throughout this webinar. This will tell you where in the webinar we are at any given time. All right, now jumping into a view of Google. This will explain visually how SEO is currently appearing in Google. So let's have a look at a search phrase at the top, which I've marked with my mouse pointer there. And that says Dentist Brisbane City. Now moving down the screen, again, if you follow my mouse pointer, you'll now see I'm pointing to the yellow shaded section. And this is actually pay-per-click advertising, also known as Google AdWords. So the top 3 results in pay-per-click are appearing at that top area. And then again, following my mouse pointer, you will see that that pay-per-click extends down the right-hand side as well. So all of those ads are actually, or all of those results are actually pay-per-click ads. Moving across, you'll see the Google Maps, also known as the Google Places listings, which are written down here, each with a corresponding map marker. So let's have a look at Central Dental, again marked by my mouse pointer, and you'll see that correlates to map marker A. So if we jump up and have a quick look at the map, that map marker A that's represented there in red corresponds to Central Dental. Interestingly enough, Google Plus pages are also dispersed throughout this particular section. So if we look at the area that's highlighted, again where my mouse pointer is currently sitting, you'll see Dr. Paul Trembath. He actually has a Google Plus page, which you will notice is quite rare amongst the rest of the dentists listed on this page. So Google Plus is actually Google's latest technology, which is slowly pushing out Google Places and Google Maps. And it's something that I'll cover in a bit more detail in this presentation, but also in next week's presentation about local search marketing. So we've covered a variety of Google products on this page, which all sit above the fold, but we haven't yet even touched on the organic search results, which we'll see on this page. So if we had scrolled down on that page I was looking at just before, you will notice there's an orange highlighted section again where my mouse pointer is currently sitting. And this represents the natural listings or the unpaid listings in Google. So again, I've zoomed in on that for you so that you can see the top results for Dentist Brisbane City. And yes, these are listed in groups of 10 with a navigation at the bottom of the page. So the first result, no surprises, is Dentist Brisbane City with the URL brisbanecitydentist.com.au, which is of course a very relevant match for that search term that we entered. At this point, I thought it might be interesting to run a quick poll to see how many of you are actually using Google AdWords currently. So I'm just going to open that poll now. And that poll is now launched, which you can respond to in your webinar control panel. And we're seeing some interesting statistics flowing in already. I'll give you just another couple of seconds to place your responses, and then I will actually be publishing those poll results for you. So another 2 seconds, and it's closing. All right, so you'll probably be able to see those poll results on screen right now. 71% of you have not used Google pay-per-click advertising, which leaves 21% that have and 8% that are unsure, which is quite reflective of the general population of small business. So it's good to see that I'm talking to a crowd that are well informed about Google AdWords, and some of you have already tried it. All right, so you're probably wondering why I've mentioned several search engines, but I'm focusing solely on Google already. And the reason for that is in the statistics. We've got some stats on screen that have been collated from 2012. The first of which says that Google's global search market is currently at 85%. That's quite an astounding figure, considering there are several other search engines out there. And yes, it is a global search figure, so it does vary slightly in Australia. But yes, by all means in Australia, we definitely have a majority of users who use Google as their predominant search engine. Another interesting statistic in comparison to the other search engines is that Google began as a research project back in 1996 and actually went live in 1997. So it's one of the longest withstanding search engines in existence and one of the most consistent in terms of its evolution. A statistic here that's quite mind-boggling is the fact that every day Google answers more than 1 billion questions from people across the globe, and that spans over 181 different countries and 146 languages. 15% of those searches that we see every day have actually never been searched before, which makes sense when you think about the English language and the number of combinations and permutations of words within it, let alone all of those other languages that we've listed above. Monthly, the number of worldwide searches across all Google sites is 87.8 billion. So that also includes other Google sites such as Google Plus, Google Maps, Google Places, and the other suite of Google products. That's still quite an astounding figure. All of these searches are made possible because of a very complex computing program called an algorithm, which sits behind the scenes and is designed to handle the immense volume of search requests that we're discussing above. So let's take a look at what a search algorithm actually is. The challenge that Google and a lot of those other search engines have is creating an algorithm which returns only the most relevant results at the top of the page, so that users don't have to scroll on through results and pages of them in order to find what they're looking for. Now, obviously, it's a challenge because what's relevant to one person is not going to necessarily be relevant to another person, despite very similar keywords and phrases. So while not every website can come out at the top of the page, or even appear on the first page of the website, it's the algorithm's responsibility to collate those all in a logical and relevant way. So let's look at an example, which again I've got pictured on the screen here. I've keyed into Google Australian tennis players. It probably comes at no surprise that there's quite a few results there, 44,200,000 to be exact. But yeah, having a look at those results, you'll notice that the first couple of results are very reputable and relevant sites. So Wikipedia is coming in at number 1, the Australian Open Tennis is coming in at number 2, and Tennis Australia at number 3. So this is just an example of what the search algorithm is capable of and is designed to do when entering a search term. Now, an important note about algorithms. This is very important for you to know, and it's the fact that Google renders results in a way that is constantly changing. So what this means for you as a searcher is that what you see one day may not be the same the next. These days, the Google algorithm depends on a whole bunch of factors that include who you are, what you are looking for, where you are located when you perform the search, what you are doing, as to what results are displayed for any given keyword combination. So that's quite a lot of factors to incorporate into the search results. Another important thing to note here is that the number of words in searches is increasing. So if we look at that graph there, which looks back to 2008, the average number of searches of words in a search phrase was under 3. It was 2.9 in July 2008. So for example, back then we might have searched just for tennis shoes. As time moves on, people are becoming more inclined and more informed, so they're using longer search phrases. So come 2013, that search term's probably more likely to be something along the lines of Nike tennis shoes 2013, or maybe even Nike tennis shoes Pegasus, or one of their specific shoe models. I am going to run another little question right now. It's actually a live question as opposed to a poll, so if anyone does have a response, please feel free to shoot that through using the questions box. Now you'll see that there is a little panda hanging at the top of the screen, and a cute little panda at that. Does anyone have any ideas as to why that is included on this slide? Now what I might do is leave that until the end during the question time with Doug to see if anyone has actually responded correctly on that one. Okay, so moving on. I mentioned that there are a lot of factors which determine how a website ranks and which are incorporated into the search algorithm. In fact, there are actually over 200 of those factors for Google. I'm going to run through a few of those key factors now, and these are ones that you should definitely be keeping in mind when undertaking SEO. The first is how often the search term occurs on your web page, which is also referred to as your keyword density. I'll be covering that in a little bit more detail down the track. The second I've listed there is domain age. The older your domain, generally speaking, the better. This rule doesn't always apply because some domains have been tarnished or even banned by Google for, I guess, abusing the search engines in the past. The third point there is PageRank, which is actually a term that Google came up with to describe the reputation and authority of a website, and that's something that you will need to put a lot of time and effort in to increase, and it's a scale from 0 to 10. I believe the only site that ranks a 10 at this point in time is google.com itself. A lot of small business pages would hover around, say, the 2 to 3 PageRank area. So constantly your job should be to try and increase that PageRank. In terms of another factor which contributes to Google's algorithm, it is domain backlinks, which again is a key to creating PageRank. It used to be the case that quantity, not quality, contributed to PageRank. So what we're saying here is if you had 300 backlinks from any different websites across the internet, your PageRank would just go up and up. These days, the algorithm is a lot smarter and it measures your PageRank based on the authority of the domain backlinks linking back to you. So for example, if you had a .edu or a .gov backlink, you will be getting a lot better reputation passed back to your site, and hence your PageRank will improve. The next point there is a DMOZ directory listing. It's important to get yourself listed on DMOZ, as this is one of the largest directories in existence online. Similarly for the Yahoo directory, which is also listed there. A couple of other factors which contribute to how your site will rank are keywords in your title, keywords in your URL, and keywords in your description. And I'll run through these in a bit more detail as we move forward. Now you'll notice in the blue box pictured there on the right that we've also got a mention of personalized results. With Google these days, whether you know it or not, whenever you're logged in to your Gmail and are performing searches on Google, you will actually be receiving personalized results unless you go into your settings and switch this off. So these results are based on things such as the previous history of your searches, the physical location of the searcher, the social graph of searches. So by this we mean your activity on Google+, which is the social media engine for Google itself. We also look at the social authority of pages, which probably refers most to the activity of your friends on these particular pages and how they interacting with them using Google+. And finally, up to the second, news and trends. So what we're finding now, Google is actually displaying more recent content above older, more dated content in personalized search results. I encourage you to try that for yourself when you get a chance. So moving on to the suggested approach for search engine optimization for your business. Before I jump into the 4-step process, I would first like to reiterate one very important point, and that is that search engine optimization is a long-term endeavor. There is no overnight quick fix for search engine optimization, and if anyone does tell you that, it is an untruth. I recommend spending at least 6 to 12 months on SEO and continuing a maintenance plan after that 12-month initial endeavor. Now let's look at the 4 steps in a little bit more detail to understand what they entail. Step 1 is to research and benchmark. So by this, what we mean is assessing your current status and your current search engine rankings. Of course, one of the easiest ways to do this is to jump into Google and have a look for yourself. While you're there, also have a look for your competitors and see where they are ranking. And what you might find is the competitors you thought you have are actually very different in Google. The final step in researching and benchmarking is to identify potential keywords that you could be targeting. Once you've gone through this step, step 2 is all about strategizing and mapping out a plan of attack. This involves selecting keywords and keeping an official list of those keywords for your reference, deciding on how you're going to optimize for those keywords, and where you're going to optimize. The other important thing is identifying who is actually going to undertake this strategy and monitor it from month to month. Step 3 is to roll the sleeves up and actually start the process of internal optimization on your site, which in SEO land we often also call the on-page optimization. This refers to things such as the page title, header tags, meta description, keyword density, and more, and I'll be covering those in a bit more detail shortly. Step 4, and probably the longest term step, is the external optimization, also referred to as off-page optimization. This refers to backlinking, directory submission, social media linking, and plenty more. And this will formulate the long-term strategy for your SEO. There's a whole array of tools available to make your SEO initiative a lot easier. Of course, some of these tools are free, and there are also some paid options available too. The tools can do a variety of things, anything from keyword research and identifying the best keywords for you to be focusing on, through to monitoring and tracking your progress so that you can automatically work out for your selected keywords how they are ranking on any given day or even at any given hour. I'm going to run through a few of my favorite tools, which I recommend that you have a look at now. The first tool, and obviously the most important, is to own a website that you can optimize, and there'll be more on that in a moment. The second tool, which I wholeheartedly recommend, is the Google Keyword Tool. This was actually designed for use with AdWords originally, but more and more SEO experts and anyone interested for SEO in that matter use this tool as a reference point. I'll be showing you a bit more about that shortly. The next tool is Google Webmaster Tools, again a free tool, and one that's vital for not only checking the health of your site, but also giving you some insights into search engine queries which are generating traffic to your website. Google Analytics is the next tool, again an absolute must-have and also free. If you don't have Google Analytics installed, I suggest that that would be the first thing that you do after this webinar on your website. Another interesting tool, this one not a Google tool but still free, is the marketing.graded.com tool provided by HubSpot. This provides an initial health check on your website. All you need to do is type in your URL and your email address, and it will give you a brief report providing some insights into how you can start to increase your SEO ranked in order of effort. So if you've got limited resources, this is a good place to turn to because it'll give you a few quick wins. The final tool there is Google Trends in the free section. This helps you to identify any keywords which are trending at this point in time. And by that I mean keywords that may be popular this month, but not the next. So those are the free tools. Looking over on the right side, you'll see there's a variety of paid tools. The paid tools are a lot more in-depth, and I would say that they're for SEO intermediate to expert use. So if you're really dedicated to your SEO, then it's worth looking at these tools. The good thing about these is that most of them incorporate the entire SEO process into one tool. So that's everything from keyword research through to the actual tracking of your keywords and your progress. If you're interested in those, I'd suggest looking at the free trials because many of them have them, and it's great to be able to try before you buy. Now, I spoke of an optimizable website, so I thought I might give you a few insights into what an optimizable website is consisting of. The key point here is that an optimizable website is updatable via your web browser. Usually we call this a content management system. If you jump into a browser such as Internet Explorer or Firefox, you should be able to update your website from that. And through there, you should not only be able to change, but also add and remove text, images, and videos. Ideally, your optimizable website will also allow you to change the text on your navigation bar, which some people also refer to as your main menu. And a point that's often overlooked is the ability for a website to be able to edit the alt tags. Now, alt tags sit behind the scenes. They're often not seen by end users, but these refer to special tags that describe the content of an image. Keeping in mind that Google is a robot, it can't actually look at an image and tell you what it's about. It needs some text to describe it, and that's what an alt tag is all about. So moving over to the right column, we'll see that an optimizable website should also allow you to edit the page titles, descriptions, and URLs of your page, and we'll look at that in a little bit more detail shortly. It should allow you to create redirects using a web standard known as the 301 redirect. It should allow you to create and delete new sections and pages on your website so that you can facilitate the need for new content and changes in your offering and product offering. And finally, ideally, your website would have a blog. Blogs are a fantastic way of gaining traction with SEO, particularly because there is so much dynamic content, and obviously it's generally laden with keywords around your specific area of trade. Now we'll have a look at one of my favorite tools, and that's the Google Keyword Tool. So you'll notice down the bottom of this slide, there is actually a URL available for anyone who is interested in giving it a go for themselves. But what I've done here is create an example for the keyword kitchen renovation on behalf of one of our clients who was looking at installing new kitchens for their clients. So we've keyed in what we thought was a good term, kitchen renovation, and we believe that there are a lot of people that are actually searching for that. However, the Google Keyword Tool has actually uncovered other ideas for us, and some that are probably more lucrative for us to focus on. So you'll notice if I run down the screen here, first of all at the top I've typed in my keyword kitchen renovation. I actually selected the target as Australia and also as global, so I could see international trends versus our own trends. And here are the results down here. They've been grouped by various categories. You'll see some are location-based, such as Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth, whereas others are more generic. Things like kitchen renovation ideas, kitchen renovations on a budget, and so on. Now, we're actually interested in this case in new kitchens and new kitchen installations, as that's our trade or our client's trade. So I've opened the new kitchen section to have a look in a little bit more detail. You'll see the phrase new kitchen, which I've circled here, has a competition of medium and has 250,000 global monthly searches. Of course, the local searches are a little bit less. In Australia, we almost experience 10,000 searches per month on this particular phrase. But nevertheless, we've uncovered an opportunity for a key phrase that we probably wouldn't have otherwise thought about if we'd run with the original phrase of kitchen renovation. So there's a number of other phrases that have been revealed down here as well. Some of them with a lot higher search volumes than others. For example, pictures of new kitchens, which only has 28 searches in Australia each month. The point with this slide that I would like to make is that what you think people are searching for and what they are actually searching for can often be two very different things. So it's important to do your research and come up with a definitive list. A note about careful keyword selection. As I mentioned earlier, the average number of keywords people are typing into a search engine is increasing these days as people become more informed about what they are searching for. So for that reason and that reason alone, I would suggest avoiding single word terms. Not only will they be difficult and highly competitive, but you'll often be competing against other more generic search terms and generic businesses, which is not the space that you want to be in. So avoid terms that are too broad, but also avoid terms that are too specialized. So what we mean by that is terms that are so niche that there's only going to be a handful of searches per month, such as the pictures of new kitchens example that I had on the previous slide. Also avoid terms which are highly unpopular or highly competitive. I've provided an example again on this slide. This time we were looking for a writer, which we keyed into Google and which yielded 11,600,000 results. Obviously the results were from a variety of different writers and from a variety of different niches. So it was too broad. We narrowed it down to real estate writer, which again yielded 1,200,000 results from across the globe. We realized that what we really wanted was a freelance real estate writer, which when we keyed in yielded 48,000 results. And finally, we thought, well, we're actually after a writer on the Sunshine Coast, so let's add that to the search phrase, which now yields 9,000 results. So those 9,000 results are a lot more relevant to what we're searching for, and this type of search activity and behavior is what we're seeing more and more from your standard Google searcher. So it's important to find that balance of search phrase when you're arriving at your keywords to focus on. Now let's have a look at on-page optimization in a little bit more detail. You may recall earlier that I referred to on-page optimization as your internal optimization, and this refers to tweaking and adjusting the words on your own website. Here on screen, what we're seeing is a somewhat typical example of a content management system, so a system that sits behind your website which allows you to update the text. Now, not pictured on this screen is the actual content for this page, so we're not seeing the heading and the actual text and images from this page. All we're seeing is the metadata. So it's important to mention that the H1 and H2 tags, which are your heading tags, are not displayed on the screen, but are very important for SEO. Moving along, we see the page title, represented by the words meta title on this page. This is actually the title that you will see in your browser. So if you are using Internet Explorer, for example, at the blue bar at the top of your screen, you will actually see this text appearing when you visit this site. So it is actually viewable by the end user. This text is also very important, but it's important also not to stuff it with keywords to still keep them relevant. Next is the meta keyword section. Now this actually hides behind the scenes and isn't generally seen by anyone that's surfing the internet. This is designed purely for Google and the other search engines to work out what your website is about. So generally you would supply a list of words separated by a comma in this specific section. And these words would be words from your keyword research phase. Next, you'll see the meta description. Now this description is again viewable by the end user, but it's actually viewable in the search engine itself. So for example, this site, which is about spa vitality, if I Googled the search term spa vitality, I would actually see this meta description text appearing beneath the heading for this particular result in the Google search engines. So this is actually what's going to entice a user to click, as well as being used for SEO purposes. So that's essentially what on-page optimization is all about. It's about getting the metadata to a state that reflects the content of your site well and also incorporates your keywords. Let's also look at keyword density, and this refers to the actual text that's appearing on your website and on any given page. Generally speaking, and I do stress generally because it is case specific, you should be aiming for a 3 to 4% keyword density ratio on any given page. So let's look at the example that's pictured below here. We've got a table, and we've created a blog post on Sunshine Coast lifestyle that's all about surfing. And our aim is to optimize, in this case, for the word surf. And we notice that it's got a keyword density ratio of 2.5%, which is just shy of that 3 or 4% that I mentioned earlier. So we're on the right track there. Perhaps we should include 1 or 2 more mentions of that word. There is a free tool that exists for you to start measuring your keyword density, and it's called textalyzer.net, which I've listed there on the slide if you'd wish to use it. One other important note, which I've mentioned earlier in terms of on-page optimization, are the alt tags. So the alt tags, again, hide behind the scenes, and they are there to describe the images and the content within them. So again, if we're looking at this example for Sunshine Coast Lifestyle, we'll see this particular image here, which is a lovely photo of Old Woman Island on the Sunshine Coast at Majimba. Over here, we're looking at the content management system for this particular image and all of the metadata. So this is the image title, which is Old Woman Island, and the alt text, which I'm referring to, is written here. In this case, we've got Old Woman Island, Surf Break, Majimba, in order to incorporate that word surf in a logical and flowing way. So what that does is actually render to this HTML down here. So we'll again see that title that we mentioned above, and then we'll see the alt tag, Old Woman Island, Surf Break, Majimba. A lot of people actually overlook this in their content management system and don't actually enter this information, and they're missing out on a lot of opportunities to optimize specific keywords. So please keep that in mind. So that concludes the on-page optimization. Now let's look at the off-page optimization. And as I mentioned before, this will take up the bulk of your SEO activity. You should be spending many months upon months completing these kinds of exercises, as this is what is going to yield you the greatest results over time. So off-page optimization essentially is all about building incoming links back to your website. It's important not to focus on only one area for these links. It's important to diversify. So I've listed a range of options on the screen for you to consider building links from. These include, if we take it from the top, blogs. And one of the easiest ways to get links back from blogs is actually to leave comments underneath articles wherever you are permitted to do so. Now, obviously, these links need to be relevant, not spammy, but they are a good opportunity to include your web link and obviously link it back to your own web page. Moving along, we've got free directories such as Hotfrog, which I would say at this point in time to exercise with caution, as Google has recently cracked down a bit on free directories of low quality and actually started penalizing people for linking from those if the directories aren't up to scratch. So exercise that one with caution. Next, we've got social media, which includes Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So obviously, these are quite prevalent forms of communication this day and age. But Google is recognizing that and rewarding people for using social media to link back to their sites. So I thought, again, it might be a good opportunity to run another quick poll now to see who's actually using Facebook already to be sharing content. So I've just launched a poll asking if anyone has ever used Facebook to share a piece of content for their business. The statistics are looking good here. I'll give you another couple of seconds to respond, and that should do it. So we're seeing 72% of you are using Facebook to share content, 26% said no, and 2% are unsure. That's quite an interesting result. I actually thought that maybe slightly more would respond using Facebook to share content. But it's worth noting, as I said, that Google is really taking social media seriously these days and incorporating any links and any sharing of content within its algorithms. So the more that you use these social media forms to promote your business in a relevant way, the better for your SEO efforts. Next, we move on to strategic alliances. If you've got suppliers or anyone that you deal in business with quite frequently that owns a website, it's worth trying to get a link back from their website to yours. Sometimes all you need to do is swap a link, and other times people will be willing to do it without even swapping. Paid directories are another option for backlinks. There's options out there such as homeimprovementpages.com.au. Again, exercise any directory with caution, because the last thing you want to do is be tied up in a dodgy directory and impact your SEO efforts. Get a Google Plus profile. It was worth pulling that out from the social media section, even though it is considered social media, because it is such a relevant and such a large opportunity in itself to get some traction. Moving on, list on a Yahoo directory, which is a paid option. Start getting active in forums and including a link in your signature on the forums. Consider submitting to article directories, PR newswires, and finally, list yourself on dmoz.org, which is the largest directory, as I mentioned before, on the internet. Also consider getting creative. Don't only use those options I've outlined on the previous slide. Start casting the net as far as you can in terms of getting your content out there. Not only will it increase the audience that you get and the exposure that you get, but you'll also be getting backlinks from very reputable sites. So a good example on this slide is Squidoo, which is pictured towards the bottom right there. What it is an opportunity for anyone who's a subject matter expert in a specific topic to go on and write an article about that topic and include some backlinks back to their site. So it's obviously a good hub for actually looking at information, but it's also a good opportunity for you to go and be a subject matter expert on a very reputable site and build some links back to your own. I won't go through the rest of those examples there, but if anyone does have a question about any specific sites on that slide, please feel free to lodge a question. Moving on, one of the absolutely critical things to do while you are undertaking any SEO initiative is to track and measure constantly so that you can see the progress you are making and work out what is working and what isn't working. Google Analytics is by far and wide the best way to do this, not only because it's free, but because it's also provided by Google. So you're using an analytics program which is linked into the very search engine that you're trying to optimize for. On this screen, you'll actually see that I've selected queries from the search engine optimization section of Google Analytics. Now, this isn't available by default. This is actually something that is hooked in through Google Webmaster Tools. So what you'll need to do is also sign up for a Google Webmaster Tools account, and then you'll be able to link the two up. I'm going to run another quick poll now just to see who actually has Google Analytics set up at this point. So I'm just launching that as we speak. All right, I'll give you another 2 seconds to respond there. Closing that poll and now sharing the results. We see 41% of you currently have Google Analytics set up, which is quite surprising. I would suggest those of you who don't, make that a priority for your website in the next week or two. So moving on and looking into the future, there's a few trends and changes you should be aware of, particularly for the Google algorithm. One of those is to do with link diversification. And what we mean by that is making sure that when you're out chasing backlinks to your site, that you diversify. You don't focus on one specific channel. Also make sure that the anchor text, which is the actual text of the hyperlink, is different from one site to the next. Another trend to keep aware of is Google+. Google business pages are now available and they're free to sign up for. And obviously, as we saw on the opening, on the original search engine results page that we looked at the start of this presentation, Google Plus ranks well above the organic search results. So it's important to take advantage of this. Finally, content marketing. Content marketing is all the rage at the moment because Google is really rewarding timely and recent content and placing it above old and dated content. So let's summarize all of this. First of all, If you're going to kick off in an SEO initiative, it's important to analyze your current website performance. Check out your workbook for a couple of exercises about this. Similarly, at the same time, you should also analyze your competitors' performance. Again, the workbook has some options for how you can go about this. Next, do some keyword research and choose a selection of keywords to start optimizing on the pages of your website. Don't write a really long list. Try and keep it something that you can keep tabs on, because this is something that you will need to be enacting month to month. Now perform the on-page optimization using the techniques that we've outlined in the workbook and also in this webinar. And next, perform the off-page optimization, which is that backlinking that we speak of. Throughout, make sure that you're creating new content and content that is relevant and attractive to your audience, and publish it everywhere. And finally, be sure to monitor your performance throughout. If you do require any further information on this topic or any downloads, please do visit the Queensland Government Business Portal. I now have the address for that on screen. I'm now going to flick over to Doug to field a few questions that have come in during this webinar.
Thanks, Jake. That was very informative. Some great tips there during the presentation, particularly around the AdWords, and quite a few questions did come in from our attendees. The first around whether or not AdWords is in fact a worthwhile exercise for the use of your advertising budget. Clearly, advertising budgets do differ depending on the size of the business. Is it better that you're spending your time and resources on refining your SEO capabilities rather than just simply paying for a keyword that could potentially cost you quite a lot of money?
Yes, it's a very interesting question, and one that I do get asked quite a bit is, where do I spend my money if I'm looking at Google AdWords or looking at SEO? The truth of the matter is that SEO is a long-term initiative, and as I said before, it's not something that can happen overnight. So if you are after immediate results, which I would imagine most businesses would be, Google AdWords is something that's worthwhile running in parallel while you get your SEO up to speed. So what I see a lot of businesses doing is actually investing in Google AdWords for, say, a 3 to 6 month period while they get their SEO up to speed, and then reassessing at that point. And if they're happy with the traction they're making with SEO, they may then turn those AdWords off.
Right. And another question that's come through, and I'm sure a lot of people will actually be asking this, a simple method of getting above your competitors is to ensure that your keywords or phrases are more prevalent on your page than theirs. But does that open you up to the risk of the Google algorithm regarding your page as being low value content?
Yes, it's another good question, Doug. In terms of what they call keyword stuffing, yes, it does exist, and it's a very risky thing to be doing and undertaking when you're looking at SEO. I mentioned before there's tools out there to measure the keyword density of your page. Now, it's important to keep tabs on this, because if your keyword density gets up over 5%, 6%, 10%, Google's going to look at your page as, a page that is potentially abusing the Google search engines, and it will penalize it accordingly. So, by all means, Google is evolving to a state where it's actually aimed at emulating human behavior. And so if something looks weird to a human, it's probably also going to look weird to Google. So yes, you will be penalized for overusing those keywords.
Thanks, Jack. Another interesting question that has come through is around the minimisation of traffic loss after a domain name change. For instance, if you're running through an alias site, how is it that you can try and minimize the impact of changing the URL?
Yes, now that's an interesting one. If you are switching to a new domain, you're essentially starting from scratch, unfortunately. And it is almost as cut and dry as that. Now, what you can do if you've got an existing domain is reroute some of that traffic from the existing domain to your new domain. Probably put a landing page on there, or even a straight 301 redirect, which we discussed earlier, and start pushing that traffic over to your new domain. So you may be able to leverage off some of the old traction you made on that old domain and start pushing it towards your new one. But in terms of that actual new domain, you are starting from scratch.
Another question here too from one of our attendees is on the algorithms, Jake. They're asking what it means to take into account what you are doing. Is that specifically in relation to whether or not you're providing content on other services such as blogs, other websites and backlinks?
Yep. Again, a very interesting question, and particularly one that's prevalent now that personalized results exist with Google. So in the past, Google didn't used to personalize results based on, what you have previously done, whether it's on Google Plus or in your email or anywhere else. Now Google actually does that. So what you are doing on Google at any given time can actually influence the results that appear in the Google search engine. So a good example is that I might actually be watching the Quicksilver Pro, which is running now, which I've Googled for to get the URL in a separate browser. And then I jump into the Google search engine and type in a surf-related topic. Now, Google already knows I'm interested in a specific event that is running now, so it might actually prioritize that specific content first above some of the other results because Google knows that's what I'm interested in. It also takes into account things like mobile. So when I say what you are doing, it can also refer to the fact that you might be on the road on a mobile device. Therefore, the results that should be presented may be a little bit different to the ones you'd see on a desktop.
Jake, an interesting question has just come in regarding keywords again. The meta tags, according to this attendee, are no longer considered by Google, and in some cases can be seen as a what he describes as a black hat technique. Is this correct, or should keywords still be I guess still have a very high level of concentration for your efforts?
Yes, it is a very valid point, and it is a topic of debate in SEO circles, the meta tag specifically. We believe, and through our testing, believe if implemented correctly, meta tags are still useful if used for the purpose that they were designed for. So if you start stuffing those meta tags with keywords, then yes, you are potentially going to get penalized. But keep in mind that there are the other search engines out there like the Bings and Yahoos of the world who may actually still take these into account more than Google does. So I personally believe these shouldn't be ignored. HTML and the way that a website was built builds this in, and takes this into account, and it was designed for a reason. So providing that the reason isn't abused, you shouldn't be penalized by Google.
Another question here, Jake, a fairly simple one for you to answer, is to explain what backlinks are.
Backlinks. Now, backlinks essentially refer to a site which is linking back to your own. So if we looked at an example of that, say you are a builder and you have your domain name, abcbuilder.com.au. You should really make it your mission, owning abcbuilder.com.au, to go out to other websites or to other blogs or social media and get people linking back from their site back to yours. So ideally, it could be a customer, for example, who has had a great experience with abcbuilder.com.au. So it would be great if they actually own their own website or their own blog, or even if they jumped onto a site like productreview.com.au and actually wrote something about your service with a link back to your site. Now, I mentioned before, the higher the authority of that site, so if that customer, for example, worked for the government and was able to get a .gov.au link back to your website, the better off you will be for SEO.
Jake, another interesting question that's come through is whether or not the placement of certain content on your website increases your relevance within the algorithms. For instance, where you might place a video. Now, obviously, you need to place keywords behind that video to describe the content that's being displayed. But does the placement on the website matter?
The short answer is, from an SEO perspective, yes, the placement does matter. On any given page on a website, it's important to get some text, obviously a page title and a heading, and hopefully below that some descriptive text before jumping into the video content. And for this, I'm going to assume that the video is hosted on YouTube or Vimeo, because that's what seems to be general practice these days. But yeah, in terms of having a page that is able to be optimized, you would need some content to sit above that video so that Google can start to work out what the page is about, and just to get a bit of that keyword density involved on the page. Also keep in mind that if you are including a YouTube video, you've actually got SEO opportunities on that video itself. So things like the actual title of the video and the description of the video when you're uploading it to YouTube can also give you SEO benefits through the YouTube search engine. So if you are embedding video, look at it as an opportunity to also grab another audience.
Also, Jake, a question around Facebook. Do likes count or have a heavy weight towards your search engine optimization? If your business page has a Facebook site, if you're encouraging people to like your content, does Google or the other search engines place a higher priority on them?
It's an interesting question, Doug. And again, it's one that is being discussed in SEO circles at the moment. Now, Google do keep their algorithmic cards close to their chest, so there's no definitive yes or no response on that. But any activity around social media that is in a positive light towards a brand is probably going to be looked on as a positive thing for SEO. I do know that there's probably a bit more emphasis on Google Plus as the social media engine of choice, for obvious reason when we're talking about Google, because they're trying to push their own products. So if you were trying to get likes or shares, I'd probably look at Google Plus over Facebook at this point in time.
Speaking of Google, how do you improve your Google Places ranking? Does that really come down to, for instance, how often you place within your website content the location of your business?
So Google Places, again, it's an interesting one because it is slowly, or actually rather rapidly, becoming old technology to be replaced with Google Plus. And essentially what Google's looking to do is get every business listed on Google Plus, which, as you said, includes signing up and providing your address, your physical address, your email address, your website, and all of those things. And when you provide that, you'll actually appear in all of the existing Google Places tools. So as we saw on that screenshot earlier, you'll appear on the listings there, and start climbing that ladder. I believe that if you start looking at getting reviews through Google Places, it can start to have a positive results on, or Google Plus rather, on how you start ranking through that. So reviews will be the next thing to look at, and that's something we cover a bit more in local search marketing next week.
Fantastic, Jake. Look, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. I hope we've managed to answer the majority of everybody's questions. We really appreciate all of your feedback and your input throughout today's webinar. It's been a very good discussion. We appreciate everybody's participation. We hope that you've enjoyed the webinar. We hope that you found it useful for your business. We're going to be sending out an evaluation survey later today, and we would appreciate your feedback. So thank you again for attending, and we hope you have a lovely afternoon. Firstly, though, before I do go, there's a link on the following page for resources. Again, we will be sending this through to you, as well as hoping that you can provide us with some really interesting survey feedback. Thanks once again, and enjoy the rest of your day.